who you are, we're going to have to admit that 2023 has been a year of change. No matter what you're involved in, it's been quite a crazy year. Capital markets, real estate investing, it's been quite a year for all of us. Have you pivoted, learned to go with the flow, or are you still trying to do the same old thing you were trying to do 2 years ago? Our guest today, she's pivoted. She's gone from a teacher to investing rock star. We're going to talk with her later. We're going to talk about how the government's pivoting, and if you own a business or entity, they're going to be all over your business in 2024. So we want to get you prepared for that. And in the end, we're going to discuss why you might want to become like the coffee bean. Sound interesting? I hope so. Stick around. Glad you're here.
Real estate has created more millionaires than any other form of investing. But how is that working out for you? Did you become a landlord and invest in rentals, expecting monthly cash flow? Only to become burned out, with all of the headaches of tenants, toilets and turnover? Are you shut out of the game by high prices and tough lending conditions? Is all of your investable capital locked up in a retirement account, and you don't know how to put it to work in real estate? Well, you've come to the right place.
I don't know about you, but it's hard to believe that 2023 is already over. Where did the year go? It seems hard to believe that it's been a year since I recorded this little piece on the island of Punta Cana teasing this podcast. I had no idea what we were going to do, what we were going to talk about. I had an idea, but I was going to push myself out of my comfort zone and bring some information to people who had never heard of note investing before. I had just won Investor of the Year at Note School. At Note Expo, I was announced as Investor of the Year. And I felt the need to pay forward exactly what had happened to me and how it had changed my life. We talk about pivoting. That's the focus of today's episode, how I pivoted in 2021 into note investing. I have a guest today who pivoted in 2020 from a teacher, and now she's a real estate investing rock star. But anyway, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about here, don't know what we do, I kind of always assume that our audience is new. What we're talking about is, rather than being a landlord or traditional flipping investments, we're talking about being the bank. We're the owners of the mortgage. The landlord or the borrower or whomever is on the note pays us through a servicer, and we collect the cash, and we don't have the headaches. I've gone the entire year here with 21 notes, and I have never gotten a borrower phone call. I have never gotten a call about the roof leaking or the air conditioning going out or noise complaints or any of the things, no turnover on them. So all the things that you have in rental real estate, I haven't had to deal with. Now, I'm really experienced in real estate. I've been around a long time, been invested in a lot of things, land development, rentals, syndications, commercial lodging. I've owned a lodge on a lake. So I've got my hands dirty in a lot of things. But I hadn't heard of note investing until about 3 years ago. And I've told my story several places. I've been on No School TV. My fourth episode was just this past Wednesday. I'll give you the links to that. If you go to my website, noclubusa.com, it's up here. There we go. Somewhere in there. You got it. Anyway, there's a newsletter there. The summer edition talks about my story. But very simply, I was 3 years away from retirement. I'm an airline pilot, been flying, including the military, for about 42 years. And I actually retire in 5 months from now. But 3 years ago, it was like, what am I going to do? I've got some money to invest. I don't want to be in rentals. I'm in some syndications, but I can't break off the door of an apartment building and take it to the supermarket to buy food. So cash flow is king. And I think it was Warren Buffett who said, if you're not making money when you're sleeping, then you're going to be broke. So anyway, I took that to heart. Joined a community called Note School, and I talk about them a lot on here because they've changed the trajectory of my family's life, my retirement going forward. And I just wanted to share it with everybody. So that's the focus of what we do here on our podcast. If you want to see an example, I do about a 45-minute video on my website. Just go to noclubusa.com, and then it's /CF, like cash flow. And it talks about how I got started, my background, gives some real case studies on notes that I own, how they work, what happens when they go wrong. That's what people ask, and some exit strategies. So it's about 45 minutes. And if you find any of what we're doing today interesting, or if you find that video interesting, or just want to learn more, at the end of the podcast, I share a QR code to a link to a 2-hour masterclass. It's perfectly free, but you'll get to learn from the people who taught me. So hopefully you'll take advantage of that. It's been the year of the pivot, 2023, especially in our business, because when conventional lending dries up, you'll see that seller financing becomes much more prevalent in our circles. I know that in February of 2023, my buddy and mentor Eddie Speed went to a convention down in San Antonio. It was actually a meeting for KW Wealth, run by Brett Tanner, and these are the high net worth individuals in Keller Williams, and several folks came away from that convention and joined Note School. A couple of them are good friends of mine now, Adam Roberts and Emily Courtwright. You'll hear from them probably in the beginning of next year on this podcast. But in their situation, they had some successful multifamily syndications, and they were cashing out, but they saw on the horizon that they weren't going to be able to get the returns for their investors that they had gotten in previous years. Multifamily is hurting right now, and they pivoted to notes, and they're doing quite well, and they have quite a following, and they're spreading the word, just like I'm trying to do. I go ahead and I speak to realtor groups, I do the podcast, and anybody wants to talk about notes, I'm willing to sit down and talk about them, because in our community, I don't feel like we're competing with anybody. When I talk to a group of people about notes, I'm not looking for them to compete with me. I'm actually looking for more folks to do business with. And within my Note School community, I've got a lot of folks there who I do business with. And I'll actually have an example of that in just a minute. So anyway, like I said, if you're new, we've covered a lot this year. We started off with a buddy of mine, Doug Faust. He's a hospital administrator in Laramie, Wyoming. And his whole thing was buying notes that cash flowed so that he didn't have to work anymore if he didn't want to. He kind of had the same dream that I did, that when we're done working, we want to be able to maintain our lifestyle and not have to field the phone calls of rentals. And you find that a lot of note investors are previous landlords, burnout landlords. They want the cash flow, but they're tired of the grind. And that's all about what this is pivoting from the grind. But anyway, we had Doug on, and then episode 2, these are all in our archives on noclubusa.com. You can just go to that website, click on podcast, and we have every episode up there about 30 minutes after it goes live. Episode 2 is my friend Emily Thompson from Oklahoma City. She's an eye doctor, full-time eye doctor, but is also into note investing as well. And she's got a lot of experience in dealing with notes that involve borrowers who are not paying. And it's an interesting strategy for real estate acquisition. The other thing is, a lot of times we can get those borrowers back on track. And that's another thing that I like about note investing, is that when we're the bank, we can have a little more compassion possibly than Wells Fargo or Bank of America. You're just a number to them. And when you are in arrears, it's like, all right, let's move you to loss mitigation and get you off the books. But in our business, if somebody's got an issue, we know that there's people on the other side. And, in my portfolio are examples of notes that have been modified to meet people's needs. And we want to keep people in their homes. In fact, there's a whole segment of note investing where we talk about seller financing and trying to find homes for well-deserving buyers who can't get a loan in these economic times. I mean, it seems like if you don't have a 780 credit score and $100,000 in the bank, you're not going to get a loan. Well, there's a lot of people out there who want and deserve home ownership, and we can be that conduit and serve that niche and bring the dream of home ownership to a lot of people who otherwise couldn't get it through conventional means. And that's been very attractive. A lot of realtors have come on into the note space this year to learn that skill, to be able to take an expired listing and not just have one bullet in their gun. Just like, hey, oh, we're going to list, we'll try again. What do you bring new when the customer says, well, I want more than what you think the property can fetch? And I do apologize if the video is a little choppy. I'm having some difficulty with my podcast provider today. The connection's not as great as it has been before. But anyway, we've had a lot of realtors come on who want to help people both selling and buying in this market, and adds a lot of arsenal to what they bring to the table. Episode 3 was our episode with Derek Long of Quest Trust Company. He's their senior IRA advisor. A lot of people don't realize the different ways that you can invest when you have a self-directed IRA or other accounts, Coverdales, Roths. It's right up, note investing is right up that alley. Most of my investments and notes are actually in self-directed IRAs and solo 401ks. Those continue to crunch. The interest comes in every month and we just roll it over. But we talk about HSAs in there, health savings accounts. Most people don't even know what an HSA is, but then they don't know that you can self-direct it. I bought a land note in North Carolina, and 6 weeks after I bought it, the borrower paid it off. And so I made about a 25% return in about 6 weeks, all back into my HSA. And if you know anything about HSAs, that's triple tax deferral, or it's not even deferral, it's just triple tax-free. Tax-free going in, tax-free accumulation, tax-free going out when you use it for medical expenses. And anyway, very cool episode. I recommend you watch that. Derek is amazing, trove of knowledge, and Quest is they are my trustee for my self-directed funds. So anyway, great people, and I recommend them wholeheartedly. Episode 4, I had the director of student engagement from Note School on. His name is Joe Varnador. And we talked about why people are flocking to Note School in this time. Why are they coming to note investing? And I followed that on with my mentor, Eddie Speed, in episode 5, Return the Favor, for him having me on Note School TV. Eddie's been in the business for about 40 years, but heart of gold, heart of a teacher, and just loves talking about notes and teaching all about the different ways you can make money and grow wealth and security for your future generations through note investing. He returned the favor by coming on my son's podcast, and we'll actually have a clip from one of those later on today. But great guy, and you won't want to miss that episode either. And I finished up the first part of the year. Episode 6 was with Melissa Malling from Allied Servicing Corporation. I know if you don't know anything about notes, but you know something about rentals, that if you don't want a lot of headaches with rentals, you can mitigate some of that by having a property management company. Well, we have the same thing in notes. I don't do collection calls on notes. They don't send the checks to me. I use a servicer, and we talk for about an hour on all that a servicing company does, why you want them to be your intermediary, how it works, what their obligations are, and everything that they do. And she does it all for, I think the company just raised her fee a little bit, but it's $25 a month. So it takes away any kind of headaches I might have. We took a short break for the summer, and then did a couple more episodes. Coming back, we kind of cleaned up a lot of things. We introduced the concept of actually buying a note that we know we're probably going to foreclose on. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that today, see where that's at. That's actually a strategy. And then in episode 8, we dive into what's called a partial. And we have to go through these things a few times with people because they sit back and say, how do you do that? Because I always say that whatever you can do in real estate, you can do with notes. But a lot of times people say, well, now I've got all these notes. What happens if I need cash? Well, they're far more liquid, but we also show a technique. It's a financial modeling technique. It's a wealth building technique. It's called the partial. And I'm going to talk about that here in just a little bit, but we dive into a case study of a note that I have where the thumbnail on that is I bought a note for about $111,000, and it was going to pay a certain amount off over the next 20 some odd years. But in the first year, I got over $51,000 of my investment back, and I kept most of the backside. Very cool concept. I'm going to touch on a little bit here because I talked about it at Note Expo, and then we'll finish up with this episode this year. So A lot of good things going on. I did mention Note Expo, so I'm going to go ahead and segue into what we did. A couple of things at Note Expo that I thought were really very, very interesting. Yeah, so since we last met, we had Note Expo here in Dallas. It's the Note Industries. I think it's the largest convention. If not, it's one of the largest, but it's been voted the best Note convention in the country. And always a good time. See a lot of my friends, see a lot of new Note investors. On Thursday night, the night beforehand, we have a special get together for all of the Note School members. We have a charity dinner. I think in the last several years, I've raised over $1 million for the Montague County Child Welfare Board. So a lot of great people, not only just making good money, but making a difference in the community and actually showing compassion where it needs to be done. So kind of people I want to hang around with. So we had a incredible keynote speaker. I've been to a lot of events in my life. This guy blew everybody away. Didn't know what to expect when he first came on, but everybody sat there with rapt attention. If you've never heard the story of Damon West, he's and I'm gonna have a video here shortly because I just can't do him justice. But long story short, he was a stud football player out of high school in Port Arthur, Texas. Went to the University of North Texas on a football scholarship. And as it happens to a lot of people, ended his career with a tackle against A&M. He got his knee blown out. And that was it. Moved into the world of stockbroking, which unfortunately also introduced him to the world of cocaine and eventually meth. He became a very proficient burglar here in Dallas. Was finally arrested. He talks about that SWAT team being his saviors, and prison changed him. He didn't allow prison to change him for a bad way. He actually changed the environment. And he actually tells a story, that talks about the coffee bean. And the reason I bring this up was the powerful analogy. He said he met a guy in Dallas County Jail before he was moved off to max security for 65 years, basically a life sentence. And this gentleman told him, "Look, Damon, you can be three things in prison. You can see prison as a boiling pot of water, and the parallels the pressures of society for us. But the pressure of and the heat of the prison, you can be like the carrot when you're tossed in that environment. You'll be soft and you'll just shrivel up and not be worth much at all. You could be what most people become is like the egg. We have a hard shell on the outside, and eventually you develop a hard heart and a heart inside. Or you could be like the coffee bean." And Damon's like, "What? What do you mean about the coffee bean?" "Well, what happens to a coffee bean when you put it in boiling water?" "Well, it turns a whole pot of boiling water into coffee. It actually changes the environment around him." Just an incredible story. So much so that I'm going to take a break here. Here's his booking shot, and now he's a motivational speaker. But he has a couple-minute video on all of this, and I want to share this with you. And I would encourage you to get his book and read his story. It's very powerful, very life-changing, and actually something that maybe people in your life need to hear as well. So here it is.
A best-selling author.
Damon West.
Author of The Change Agent.
Very, very impressed.
Damon, welcome to the show, brother.
Damon West.
Give it up, Damon West.
13 years ago, today, was sentenced to essentially life in prison. And it's one of the most remarkable stories you are ever going to hear.
I was playing football and I got injured, a career-ending injury in 1996 against Texas A&M. Got into hardcore drugs in 96, cocaine, ecstasy pills. I was training to be a stockbroker in Dallas when I was introduced to meth for the first time. When I broke into people's houses, my victims, I didn't just steal their property, man. I stole their sense of security. I believe that God sent angels down to me that were in the form of SWAT teams in Dallas. And they're armed. They look like they're just in a massive body armor and everything. There's guns in my faces. They're screaming, "Don't move, don't move." They didn't arrest me that day. They rescued me that day, brother. 65 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. This Dallas SWAT team, those are my saviors, man. They plucked me out of a world that I wasn't going to get out of. There was this one guy that was so different in Dallas County, this old black man named Mr. Jackson. He said, "Imagine prison as a pot of boiling water." He said, "Anything we put to this pot of boiling water is going to be changed by the heat and the pressure inside that pot. If I put a carrot in the pot of boiling water we call prison," he said, "What happens to the carrot?" And I'm like, Mr. Jackson, the carrot's going to turn soft. The egg is going to turn hard, man, like a hard-boiled egg. This man told me that day, he said, if I put a coffee bean in that same pot of boiling water we call prison, he said, now you have to change the name of the water to coffee. Because he said the coffee bean, Ed, he said the coffee bean had the power to change the entire atmosphere inside that pot because the power was inside that coffee bean. And he said, just like the power's inside you. Instead of letting the life sentence define you, she said, you change yourself inside this prison. You change this prison actually around you. She said, yeah, the coffee bean. And on November 16, 2015, I walked out of a Texas prison.
This is exactly why I started this show, is what we just did right now.
One of the most powerful messages that anybody could hear, not just a football team, anybody.
I go around telling the coffee bean story, and it's caught on in college football programs all over the country, in corporations and schools.
And has become one of the great speakers on planet Earth, one of the great influencers on planet Earth. These things that you think disqualify you are actually the great qualifiers for you to help change other people's lives, including your own.
Go out there and go be a coffee bean.
Just an incredible story. If you think about it, that's the ultimate pivot. He's had to do it a couple of times, but he had to pivot just to survive in the environment of prison. But what a powerful story. I sure recommend that you get his book. He's got the Coffee Bean, which is a kind of a simplified version of his story. Get the Change Agent, which is the book they showed at the beginning of that video. But just such an amazing guy. I mean, he's not all that big either. You can see, a guy like that went to Supermax for 65 years. That's what his sentence was. He was out in 7. But he's not only survived and thrived, and that's kind of the theme of today is pivoting and trying to make the best for yourself. So anyway, definitely recommend that you go to his website, check out all that he's got going on. Let me get that out of the way. You'll be glad you dove in, looked at his story, got his books, and there's probably somebody in your life who can relate to his story as well, or can learn from his experience. So I know a lot of people at Note School or Note Expo during the lunch break after that went down to the bookstore in the mall that we were attached to and were looking for his book. So anyway, great guy, great story, and I felt it was really important to go ahead and bring that story to you. Also at Note Expo, part of what we've been up to since then, I was actually asked to present my story on the note that we talked about on podcast number 8, which was this particular note here in Mississippi. I don't think it was anything special, but it was just more illustrative of partials and how we recapitalize our accounts. Very simply, I had put 111,000 change into this note. It was worth about 135 an unpaid balance. The property's worth about 189. And in the first year, not only did I get a full year's worth of payments out of it, but also about $40,000 more. So after my first year, I had gotten about $55,000 of my money back out and retained quite a bit of residual interest on the back end. So if you'd like to see the deep dive into that, go to podcast 8, and we cover that in detail. But it's called selling a partial, and the math on this just differentiates us so much from other ways to invest in real estate. But it's possible to buy a note, sell off the front end payments for more than you paid for the note, and be sitting there on a chunk of cash at the end of that period that you have no basis in. It's kind of amazing. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and pull up a small snippet. We're going to hit the review machine and go back to podcast 8. Eddie Speed, owner of Note School, a legend in the business, was on my son's podcast. It's called The Only Real Estate Podcast Worth Listening To. That's the name of it. And we talk about partials a little bit, and I just wanted to reshare that with you again.
Well, here's what you could do. You could buy a 20-year note, Brian. You could turn around and take one of your clients that you ever have any friends or family or people that that you go to church with or school, with their parents and all that stuff, the parent of the kids, and they're all saying, hey, Brian, when you get in one of those deals and you need a partner, let me know. Have you ever been solicited about that?
Oh, yeah. As a realtor, we call it our database. It's kind of the lifeblood of our business.
All right. So you call one of those people and you turn around and you take a self-directed retirement account and you fund $100,000 and you buy that 20-year note and let's just say for easy conversation purposes, you're going to get $1,000 a month. Okay. You turn around and sell 10 years of that note. Okay. And you sell that for, let's just say, in the high 90s. You paid 100. You sell the first 10 years for, call it 98,000.
Okay.
You've recouped 98,000 of your $100,000 investment. How much money do you have invested to own the back half of that note?
So $2,000 for the last 10 years?
$2,000 gets you 10, and this is called a partial, and this is a technique that we've really perfected. And people say, that's magic math. And I'm like, no, it's just math you didn't know. It is magic if you don't know it.
Okay, we got to drill down deeper on this. This is okay. Like I'm 5 again. Okay. So you're selling the first 10 years.
Yeah.
So what does my cash flow position look like for the first 10 years? Do I get any?
You sold it.
Okay, so I sold it.
So that's a wealth growing strategy. That's not a cash flow strategy.
Right.
So you may not do that on every deal you buy, but let me tell you something. You got those kids, take a Coverdale educational account and do that strategy and take one note that would pay for 2 years of your kid's college. Right. No kidding.
Really? And so if you diversify, right? You can diversify and you can mix your bag a little bit between present cash flow and future cash flow. And I'm sure this where the financial modeling aspect comes in. You could essentially predict your wealth building strategy up front for the next 20 years.
Well, and Brian, to tie it to the example you're showing before about rentals and how I'm going to hang out for that appreciation. Okay, so what if you could just take $2,000 and say, hey, I'll put in $2,000 now, and then 20 years from now, I'll sell that rental house for $100,000.
Right.
That's basically because you've kept the back end.
Right.
So your back end has value.
Right.
But it's an incredible leverage technique. Yeah.
And we'll, at the end of the show, we're gonna give something so people can kind of see a little class. We'll have a couple hour little class and actually go through step by step and show the math and show. So it's not, I don't want to make it mystical.
Sure.
Right now we're just talking about what's possible, not all the mechanics of how you do it. But we're saying what's possible, and people will come to me all the time and they say, Eddie, you talk about having investable capital, and I do have investable capital. I have $300,000, but I'm not Tom, and I can't go own 20 notes. And I'm like, oh yes, you can.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but once again, they don't know what's possible, and we're simply teaching people. You know why I love realtors? Because realtors are problem solvers. They're fun to teach because they're problem solvers, and they're not scared of real estate. Right. They already know the collateral, and I've said this. I've spoken a lot over many years, right? And I've said this from audiences from Miami to Seattle and everywhere in between. And that is, would you rather be a landlord or the bank?
And when I try to explain the partial to folks, sometimes it takes a lot for them to wrap their head around it. As Eddie says, suspend your disbelief. I teach about it quite a bit. Like I said, podcast number 8 in our library goes into a deep dive on this particular partial. And long story short, I put $111,000 in this note. In the first year, I had about $55,000 of my money back and a substantial interest in the back end of the note. So it's an incredible wealth building technique that I don't think you can do with any other piece of real estate, or any other type of real estate investing. But you don't have to take my word for it. Like I said, stick around to the end of the broadcast or go to noclubusa.com and you can find a QR code to go to a 2-hour masterclass taught by Eddie, and they'll cover the partial along with a lot of other things that you don't know about when it comes to notes. They say you don't know what you don't know, and it's a great way to find out. Totally free. You'll walk away with some spreadsheets. You'll actually have a spreadsheet to calculate partials, and if you're like me, you'll sit there all day and say, wow, this is pretty cool stuff. So anyway, speaking of pretty cool stuff, I've got some pretty cool sponsors for the podcast. So before I move on to the rest of the show, I want to go ahead and recognize them. So we'll start off with we got Homeward Property Management. If you own notes, you have a servicer. If you own rentals, you need a property manager. It's plain and simple. We all know that. Best one in DFW is Homeward DFW. Been in the business for quite a while. Dana Wynn runs a tight shop, in-house maintenance. You name it, they take care of it. Nothing but great reviews with Homeward. So if you've got a property in the DFW area, I think they're even up in Oklahoma now. Go to their website. Also, occasionally they do have a listing on there. So if you're looking for rental properties to buy and keep them under management, that'd be a website to go to as well. So go ahead and check them out. One of the premier property managers around. Deep Blue Capital. I told you I'm into several syndications, mostly through CrowdStreet. If you're part of CrowdStreet, you've seen that the offerings this year have gone down substantially. It used to be you'd get one a day in your mailbox. Now it's maybe one or two a month. Tough time in commercial real estate, but my son Brian and a couple of very experienced buddies in commercial real estate have formed Deep Blue Capital. They're looking at multifamily and other commercial investments, but recently just acquired a student housing project down in Waco. Turned it around. It's well beyond second year projections right now. Just the classic, it wasn't run properly, and now they run it properly, and it's popular place to be, and rents have gone up, and it's all good. So if you like to be involved in opportunities like that, or at least learn more about the business, go to Deep Blue Capital. They do have a podcast. They're all about education. It's called the More Doors podcast from Deep Blue Capital. They have movers and shakers in the business on there, and you can learn quite a bit. So once again, Deep Blue RE, just like that. And you can also link to their More Doors podcast. Speaking of podcasts, tourstudios.com, Dallas-based. My buddy Jesse Showalter runs it. If you need a soup to nuts solution for your podcast, he has a studio right here in North Dallas that you can use. He'll produce all of your content. That clip from Eddie was part of a podcast that he does, the only real estate podcast worth listening to. That's what it's called. But he has that studio, and he'll make you look great. He's got a lot of other podcasts that he does. Or you may just need him for the simple things like I do, where you get him on, he gets us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So anyway, soup to nuts, reach out to him at tourstudios.com, whatever your need is. You can be remote somewhere around the country or right here in Dallas, and he has a solution for your podcast needs. Also, if you're in Dallas or Fort Worth or the surrounding area, this is my go-to real estate agent. Obviously, I'm biased. It's my son, Danny, but his credentials are impeccable. You talk about trying to thrive in this market as other realtors fall by the wayside. He's out there crushing it. So if you want somebody who's going to work 110%, 25 hours a day for you, whether you're a first-time buyer, which he specializes in, or any other aspect of real estate, go ahead and give him a call. That's the number right there. And finally, our sister site, usnoteexchange.com. If you're sitting on a note on land or seller finance or whatever, and you're interested in selling it, we may be interested in buying it or finding somebody who's interested in buying it from you. So go ahead and contact us there. Also, on a side note, I'm very active in buying and selling land. So if you got something that meets that criteria, go ahead and hit me up as well. All right, so as I alluded to back in the opening, we buy notes generally for cash flow. That's what I do. Performing notes where a check comes to my mailbox or ACH every month, and I don't worry about it. But sometimes it makes sense to buy a note where somebody's not paying on it as a property acquisition strategy. When we buy NPLs, sometimes they're already in the foreclosure process or might be headed there. In this case, I did buy a note in Mississippi where the borrower hadn't been paying. I've talked about it in the previous couple of podcasts. So I'm going to update the group on where we stand with that one. So to refamiliarize yourself, we are talking about a note in Mississippi. The note date, the borrower closed on February 1st, 2018 for $55,000. Only put $1,500 down, which when you're buying performing notes, you generally want to see some more down. You want to see them have a little more skin in the game. So the loan was, I think my figure's off there just a little bit. The loan was $53,500, 10% for 30 years. So a P&I payment of $473.89, which is important because this particular borrower, if they look to rent in that area, we're paying about $700 a month. So as of January 1st of 2023, she had 302 payments left after making a payment in March of the catch-up amount. So she got caught up to 302 payments left on March 17th of this year. So it only brought her current through January 1st of this past year. So the unpaid balance on the loan at the time that I was looking at the note this past June was $52,228. The unpaid legal balance was $55,000 because whenever you're trying to collect and have to use some legal means, whether it's inspections or legal notices, legal procedures, all of that is tossed onto the unpaid legal balance, which is something you can collect at foreclosure. We talked about that before. So to find the value of the property, you can start with a broker price opinion. We figured it out to be anywhere from $58,000 to $60,000. That's just one estimate I use. If you're a realtor, you can go to narrpr.com and get an account there, and you can get a estimate of value with a confidence score. There's PropStream. If you use PropStream, PropWire is the free version that does just about everything PropStream does. You go to Zillow and Redfin. So in the end, we crunched all those numbers and looked at it being worth about $60,000 and would rent for about $700 a month. So I bought that note, that unpaid $55,000 balance for $32,634. So it's a 55% investment to value. And once again, it's a property worth $60,000 and would rent for about $700 a month. Now, like I said, when I bought it in June, the borrower had not made a payment since March and was actually got her caught up to January. So we hired a door knocker who does an inspection. He looks around the property, leaves a letter saying, hey, you need to call the servicer. You are delinquent. And he did that, saw that the property is occupied. You can see there's a couple nice cars in the driveway. This was done on June 28th. And it was about 3 days after I purchased the note. You can see it's occupied, cars in the driveway, the AC is running, and no issues were noted with the property. So the next day, the borrower calls the servicer. That's what we're looking for. And said, spoke to the borrower this morning, and she'll be sending 3 payments on or before July 15th, and they will send a payment each month with additional funds to bring the account current. That's been her history. Get way behind and then get caught up. And that's kind of what I was hoping she would do. Well, borrower has not paid or contacted the servicer since. So on July 31st, I'd hired an attorney who sends a fair credit letter, notice of default, and on there it says hired to foreclose on this property. And that's something that I add to the unpaid legal balance. So the possible outcomes, gets back on track. Well, this is an old slide. She did not get back on track. She completely ignored the notice and has been living without making any payments. And I think a lot of you can relate to that in the rental world as well. We could have done a cash for keys where we say, hey, we'll give you some money to move out, keep it broom swept clean. We'll have it inspected at the time of move out. And if it looks nice, you'll go ahead and get a check and be on your way. That works quite a bit. But she was not interested in responding to any phone calls. So the next option is to foreclose. If you're calling this story, it's a contract for deed where I actually own the deed. I have the deed. And she doesn't get the deed until the property is paid off. So it's a non-judicial procedure as far as having to go through a lot of foreclosure procedures. There's a hearing. So we'll update you on that. We had a hearing in the middle of December. We just had it last week. My legal cost for that was about $1,700. So far I'm into the property for about $34,300. And there is also a judgment against the borrower. So she has 30 days to evict, and doesn't on the 30th day, the sheriff will come and make sure that she's out of there. So we'll update how that goes on the next episode on how we moved on with the property. I've got a couple of options. I could sell it for cash. We could sell it to an investor. We could have somebody fix it up and resell it on another note. So plenty of options there, but just want to get you caught up on that. It kind of went as I expected. In this business, I'll be more than happy to work with people who want to work out their circumstances. Maybe the payment was too high. Maybe she needed a deferral. I had a note in New York where the borrower got about 6 months behind, but she was trying her hardest, had some circumstances. So after she made several payments in a row, then we went and deferred that portion that she was behind to the back end of the note, and now she's considered back on track, and that helps with credit reporting as well. So anyway, but if you're not going to respond to the borrower and you're just going to try to live for free as long as you can, well, then eventually it's going to catch up to you. So anyway, that's an update on that particular issue. One thing I wanted to share with you as the year wraps up is not note related, but if you're like me and you protect your businesses with an LLC, and very prevalent in real estate, other businesses, well, of course, the government couldn't keep from giving you a colonoscopy when it comes to investigating your businesses and getting information. So not sure how many of you have heard about the Corporate Transparency Act, which is supposed to go into effect January 1st, 2024. It puts a host of reporting requirements on your LLCs, your S Corps, your C Corps. Very, very invasive. Nobody's happy about it. Kind of hoping it goes away. It's definitely an overreach. But anyway, I'm not going to be the expert on it. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV or podcasts. But I have several attorneys who've spoken about it, and I wanted to bring one up for you. It's my buddy Clint Coons out at Anderson Advisors. They handle my LLCs and entity formation, and they have a YouTube channel, and I got permission to bring one of Clint's videos on about the CTA. If you have entities right now, you've got a year to comply, so don't worry about that. It's really going to hit the folks who start after 2024. You're going to have a much shorter reporting window, but let me share that video with you so that you at least have some awareness. Like I said, I'm not an expert in it, but I'm going to be working with them to make sure that I'm in compliance going forward, and you're going to want to be as well. So we'll queue up Clint, and then we'll move on.
Hey, big changes to the Corporate Transparency Act are coming in 2024, and you need to learn about it. I'm going to share with you right now some of those important changes that I think will affect you next year and going forwards. All right, let's get started. So here's the thing. On my channel here, I have a few videos on the Corporate Transparency Act and the importance of it. If you don't recall what it's about, it has to do with any business entity that you've set up currently, own, operate, or you're going to be setting up in the future. You need to report who the owners are or the people that control it to FinCEN, which is the Department of the Treasury. And they're keeping a database of these individuals for each entity. Now, before I tell you about the changes that you need to be aware of, I do want to tell you this as well. I get a lot of questions on my channel about whether or not Corporate Transparency Act is destroying anonymity. You know, many of the strategies that I refer to when we're protecting our assets and setting structures up for rental real estate or businesses in general deal with having anonymity through a Wyoming limited liability company. And a lot of people are concerned that the Corporate Transparency Act is just going to blow that out of the water, and going forward, you're not going to have any anonymity. Well, that is not the case. The Corporate Transparency Act, this information that is being collected on the owners is not going to be made publicly available. So people will not be able to search for this information. So it's going to be held private, so don't worry about that. All right, now on to the changes that I think you need to be aware of. Okay, so beginning in 2024, any new entity that is set up, the FinCEN has increased the reporting requirements now to 90 days. That means from the date in which you set up your entity in 2024, you will have 90 days to report to them the required information on the beneficial owners of that company or the people that exercise substantial control. Now, what information do you need to report? Well, I've talked about this, and essentially what you need to do is provide a copy of your driver's license, passport. They want to know who the owner's name, date of birth, all that information, and your address of where you reside. So that's going to have to be submitted on the owners of the entity. Now, here's something that you may not be aware of that I think is very important when it comes to the reporting for FinCEN purposes. Now, that information that gets submitted, a copy of your driver's license and your address, if that information changes, such as you move, then you must update FinCEN with this new information as to your new address. If you don't do so within, it's either going to be 14 or 30 days after you make that change, then you're going to be penalized $500 a day for any late updates that you're making to your change of residence. So this is key here. You got to keep this in mind, that when you change your address, you need to update. Now, the second thing that you need to be aware of as well when it comes to this new rule is that if your driver's license expires, then you also need to update that information as well within that same time period. So they want to keep track of who all the beneficial owners are of these business entities and where they reside. I mean, is this government intrusion? 100% it's government intrusion into our lives by what they're requiring of us. But it's just part now of doing business here in the United States. Now, one last thing I want to bring up here about FinCEN and reporting. In my other videos on YouTube, I talk about the ability to obtain a FinCEN unique identification number. And what this means is that if you're going to be creating multiple entities, you don't have to keep sending in a copy of your driver's license each time you set up a new entity. You can actually get a number, think of it like a social security number, and you've now been identified to that number. So when you're reporting, all you do is give FinCEN the number itself, and you don't have to provide them any of that other extra information that would be required if you didn't have this unique identifier number. Now, I thought this was the way to go. And I said, hey, listen, you're creating entities, go out there, obtain a unique identification number, and then you can just submit that every time. You save yourself the hassle of always submitting up your driver's license, etc. When you're setting up a new business entity. Now I've rethink that. I've come to understand now that if you obtain a unique identifier number, it's yours for life. Now that means you can have no businesses. You could shut everything down, decide to get out of the owning real estate or running a business altogether, so you have no business entities. But since you have that number, they require that whenever you move or your driver's license or passport expires, you have to update them. So you're going to be tied to them for life under this number, and you have to always keep them informed of where you're at and your information. Listen, because of that alone, I am not going to obtain one for myself, and I would highly encourage you not to get one when you start comporting with FinCEN and start setting up your entities or having to report on existing entities that you already own. So that's something I wanted to bring out there. I know I've talked about it in my other videos, but now that I've learned this, I am not going to get one, and I would highly encourage you not to get one as well. So one last point here as well. A lot of questions that have come up about existing entities. So if you have some existing entities that you've set up, maybe you have 4, 5, 10 entities you've created over the past, I don't know, you put the number in there, 2, 3, 15 years. Those entities are not required to report until January of 2025. So don't stress on it. Only the entities that are being set up in 2024 have to report in 2024. You get an extra year for your existing entities. So this is something else I've been telling people as well. Hey, if you know you're going to be creating some entities in 2024 and you're going to need some LLCs set up or corporations, whatever it is you're doing, I would think about setting those up now. Why not give yourself some extra breathing room before the reporting goes into effect? And the reason why I say that is that you never know. They may have a change in administration and someone else may come in and say, you know what? We're going to cancel this thing. We're shutting it down. Now I'm in a position where my information is not being collected by the Treasury Department, so they don't have that on me. And I think I'd rather prefer that. One of the things I'm going to be doing this year, right before the end of the year here, now that we're coming up into December, is I'm going to go out and create a slew of LLCs. I'm going to create 4 or 5 new limited liability companies, put them on the shelf, and I don't have to report on them until 2025, just under the belief system that, hey, maybe some light will shine on this and people will realize what an intrusion it is into our personal lives.
All right, so hopefully that got your attention a little bit. Like I said, take a deep breath, be aware that it's out there. Like Clint says, hopefully it goes away. It's probably a very politically charged issue as well. So take your time. I had another attorney, to paraphrase him, don't be in the first 3 or 4 months because actually the website's not even built yet to do this. Remember Obamacare and the mess that was with the rollout. The compliance mechanism isn't even in place yet. But you don't want to be the first to try to go in there, and you probably don't want to be at the end also when you're up to the last day and the website crashes. So anyway, we'll talk more about it as the year progresses, but I wanted you aware of it. You can go to the Anderson Advisors YouTube page, and they'll have some updated information there as well. So anyway, I'm going to take a real quick break here, just about 30 seconds. And then in our studio is Brenda Price from Tennessee. We're going to talk about her pivots and what she's doing today. And I think you find it very inspiring. So we'll check back with you in about 30 seconds. So, all right, we're back. Hopefully you like that little picture I put up there. The phrase, the most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is tenacity. That's my friend Brenda Price on there. Brenda the lender. We'll talk about that going on later today. She's got her hands in quite a few things, but wasn't always like that, right, Brenda? You started off as a school teacher, and we'll talk about that. But tell everybody where you're from and tell us about Tennessee.
Yes, I'm from a little town called Seymour, Tennessee. It's in the middle of Knoxville and Pigeon Forge. And I've lived here all my life. I taught school here for many years at the school that's down the road from my house now. I started teaching in 1999, 4th and 5th grade.
4th and 5th graders. And I did that for 21 years, 22 years?
Yes, sir.
Bless you. But from what I understand, and I know Brenda's story, she's a fellow Note School student. She also works in the liaison department, and we'll touch that later on. But I do know her story, and I really wanted her to share today because she's the epitome of a pivot, which we're talking about today. So I know you had all the degrees. You've got degrees in not just education, but what else do you have as far as degrees?
So I have a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, a master's degree in education, an education specialist degree from Lincoln Memorial University, and a doctoral degree in educational leadership and policy analysis from East Tennessee State University. So
you're all in. So for over 2 decades, you were all in and teaching our 4th and 5th graders. But as I recall, as it got towards the end, you weren't completely happy with the way things were going.
I was definitely all in, Tom. So I totally bought into education and I loved it for many, many years. And I hope and pray that I made a difference for many children along the way.
Sure.
I, like many teachers, started to get very tired and burn out. And then when COVID happened, I did not agree with a lot of the way it was handled. My head and heart no longer aligned with public education. And I stayed past that a little bit longer teaching than I probably should have. But I eventually came to the conclusion that it was no longer what I needed to be doing. And God had another plan for me. And then I pivoted.
And at this time, you've got to understand you have a wonderful young son and wonderful young daughter. How old were they when you're making this decision to transition?
They were young. So really, I started thinking about real estate and making the change when they were 7 and 9.
Wow. Okay.
Probably eventually quit teaching when they were closer to teenagers.
And everything's on your back. You're a single mom. Bless you. And so you're a teacher dealing with everybody else's kids. You have a couple of your own. So I think a lot of the audience out there can relate to all that you were dealing with. So tell us about the decision to go ahead and transition to real estate. What were you looking at, and how did that go in the early days when you went to start to do that?
So I just woke up one day and decided this is the path I need to take. I know that people accumulate wealth through real estate. I know how to learn. I'm obsessed with learning new things. So I decided to address that obsession to real estate. So I studied every free whatever I could find on YouTube, every book I could consume. and just became quite obsessive with real estate. And I found a mentor in Knoxville who was fantastic, Whitney Nicely. She had a program called First Deal Done Fast.
Okay.
And I signed up with her, and I quickly started buying properties. I bought one using the HELOC on my house, my first one, with 20% down. And
what kind of property was this?
A single family, a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath. And that was my first one. And I had some great tenants, and I had to clean it out and rehab it. It was quite nasty when I purchased it.
So did you get in there with the hammer and the screwdriver and do all that?
Yeah, we did the things. Clean the refrigerator out because it had cat hair in it. I mean, just all the fun things that you do when you buy a rehab.
Glamorous, huh?
Yes.
Yes. Not like it is on HGTV, right?
It is not like HGTV, no.
Yeah. Okay. So you got the first one, and then you scraped together a down payment for another, as I recall.
And then I started studying the BRRRR method, buy, rehab, rent, repeat, refinance, and repeat. And so I did that. And I hit a wall because I ran out of funding, and I didn't have private money lined up at the time. So I started studying creative financing, and I found Eddie Speed at Note School.
Fantastic. What did you think about being a landlord?
I think it has its challenges. So for the longest time, I wore all the hats, all the many hats, and I still wear probably more hats than I should, but I'm doing better about hiring some fantastic people that are helping me with my portfolio now. But I'll have to tell you, when you start growing a portfolio, you have one house. Okay, that's a thing to deal with. But when you start getting up there to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you get into the teens with houses, it's just more to manage than one person can do. But it's difficult. It's difficult. I'm not complaining though. It's quite the blessing. But I have 15 in my portfolio right now, and I think I'm going to level out at that for a while.
Anyway, for you may have noticed we're having some connection issues, but we're gonna power through. The internet at the bunker here in North Texas isn't working all that well today, but bless you, Brenda, for hanging in there. We're going to get this done. So so anyway, so you've got portfolio rentals. You said you're about 15 now, and you're going to cap out for a little bit. So then you mentioned that you saw Eddie Speed, and what intrigued you about note investing? What got you interested in that?
Well, originally I signed up with Note School because I needed to learn creative financing, because I started where I started. I didn't have a fund to start investing with, so I needed to learn the tips and tricks that he teaches, which are fantastic, and implemented those. And then now that I have built up a rental portfolio, I'm switching to buying notes instead of houses, because it intrigues me that I can be the lien lord and not the landlord. So when something goes wrong with the house, nobody is calling me. If an HVAC unit goes out, I don't have to spend $7,000 to replace it. If somebody's shower is cold that morning, they're not going to call and tell me about it, and then I have to get a plumber in there. So I could go on. But I like
We're celebrating 1 year of being on the podcast, and I still have yet to have a borrower call me, with 21 notes.
There you go. I love it.
So,
and when you're a single woman, it's a great way to go.
Absolutely.
You don't have the help to go and fix something if it needs, or if a tree falls, you're not going to go out there with a chainsaw and clean that up.
No, and you as a woman face kind of unique challenges in the industry that us guys kind of take for granted. So there's some walls there that you're extremely qualified. You're well qualified to bust through them, but you have additional challenges that I don't have to deal with. So that's more hats off to you as well. So I appreciate that. So tell me where your businesses stand now. You've got a lot going on. Where's Brenda now in 2023, at the end of 2023? What all do you have going on?
I'm honored that you're asking me about that today. Thank you. So I'm managing the rental portfolio. Some are short term and some are long term, and I have 1 or 2 midterms. So that's a whole thing to do there. And then I'm in the note space and actively buying notes, and I'm liaison for Note School. So I get to talk to some fantastic people when they join Note School and hear their stories, which I love doing. And also I am now a mortgage loan originator with a fantastic company called Nexa.
Okay.
So I help people purchase homes. I helped a single lady purchase her home, and it's the first time she's ever bought a home by herself for herself at 60 years old. So
Fantastic.
I love mortgage loan originations, helping people
Mm-hmm.
purchase homes as well.
Well, that's where the little picture that I put up at the beginning, the most difficult thing is the decision to act.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was I think it came off of your one of your Nexa posts. So
Yeah.
you've pivoted to a lot, and that is awesome. I want to dive into the mortgage thing and the liaison thing in just a second, but you are also, I mean, you're not just another note investor, but you're doing it at a high level. You were recognized at Note Expo. You were in the case study finalist for one of your notes. You want to give the thumbnail on that? The one that you did on that, where you made 3 times a teacher salary in one.
I did, but
Yeah.
that was from a house, Tom. That was not from a note.
Oh, that's right. Well, it's a house, but
Yeah.
yeah. So, but I think people will be interested to hear how you accomplish that, because there are a lot of people out there that don't own notes, but have the knowledge or want to get the knowledge of creative financing, and how want to see how you put that to work.
Yes, and I'm using the funds that I made from that to buy notes and start my build
That's
up my
awesome.
note portfolio. So that was a home that I purchased owner finance at 0% financing from a seller that had a situation that he had a problem, and I
Right.
helped him solve his problem and purchased that home from him and rented it and held it for many years. And then, as we all know, we're in an inflationary market, which is good if you own real estate.
Right.
So I sold it for more than I'd paid for it due to the market, which
Mhm.
is a blessing to me at the time. And everybody won in that scenario. That was a win-win-win. And some of
Right.
the things that I learned to buy that house, I learned from Note School and Eddie Speed. So, the 0% financing, is a thing. I didn't think it was possible. And
Right.
yeah, people will do that if you solve their problems. So, we did that. And I think everybody was happy with the outcome.
Well, and the thing is, if you go to Note School TV, I think your episode was on around December 5th or so. I'd love for you to dive in a little bit more. I mean, Brenda's wonderful, but she's also very humble. She won't sit here and brag on herself, but that's quite an incredible story. She could have squeezed this person for more money, but she did right by them and helped them in a situation. In the end, she made quite a bit of money, but at the same time, she helped somebody out who was in a bind, and didn't hold this thing for a lot of years. What was it, like 4 years, something like that?
Yeah, well, more like 3. I could have held it longer based on the terms of the owner finance situation, but it was they're all unique situations. You have
Right.
to really listen to your sellers and find out what is their problem before you can
Right.
solve their problem. So we had many discussions about it, but me and the seller, but his mother had Alzheimer's and was in a nursing home, and she needed a certain amount of money a month to stay in that
Mhm.
nursing home. So that's the amount that I paid him. So he was
Right.
happy to get that a month. He was focused on that. And then unfortunately, she passed away, and he no longer really needed that for her. So I sold the house. And
Okay.
I could have held it longer and
Right.
enjoyed that 0% financing and more appreciation.
Right.
But I knew at this point he was ready to be cashed out.
Right. You were under no obligation to pay him out in full. You could have just, metered in the money like you had been, but you did right. And like I say, when you solve somebody's problems, everybody makes some money, but you did it the right way. And that's one of the reasons why you're so popular in No School. Everybody knows you're the real deal, and you've got a big heart. So,
Sweet.
so you've joined Next. I understand you've already written some paper as a mortgage originator. So that's exciting. So you've got everybody covered. If they want a conventional loan, you can try to help them there. If not, then you know how to help what we call the penalty box buyer, somebody
Yes.
who may not qualify.
Yes,
And
I
we're
sure do.
seeing a
And I-
lot of that today.
Yeah,
Good people.
Yeah, and I know
Right.
how to help you if you have a problem house. You don't know what to do with it. You can't sell it on the market. You don't have the money to fix it. I can take that house over and make it work for everybody. So I think all my businesses have synergy. They all go together.
Right. So many tools in your tool belt. And so you started in real estate. When did you buy your first house?
Oh my gosh, Tom. I guess 2019. at the
Okay.
very
So
end.
we're only talking 4 years, right? So you made so you cut the cord, you decided to act, and now you're sitting on 15 rental properties. You're a mortgage originator. You're big into notes. I mean,
Yes.
you're doing everything. So that's amazing. You jumped right in, and that's the big thing. And that's probably what you encourage people to do.
Absolutely. I encourage people to take action. And you're going to
Right.
make mistakes. I could sit here and talk to you about the mistakes I've made too. So I don't want it to sound like, oh, it was so easy peasy. It was not. And I've made some really big and expensive mistakes. You know, you're going to pay for your education one way or the other.
Absolutely.
So
Well, mistakes are what create experience, you know. And if it was easy, everybody would do it. But
Yep.
mistakes also, weed out the folks who, shouldn't be doing it possibly, So
That's
if
right.
you learn from your mistakes and you pick up and go on, So as far as an action taker, you mentioned you joined Note School as a liaison. So my understanding is that you get to coach the new people who come on and send them in certain directions. So what's that like? What can you tell us about, your experience with that and what people are telling you?
So when people come to Note School, I meet them at the front gate and say welcome, and we talk about what their path is, what their situation is, if they are more interested in buying performing notes or non-performing notes or the creative financing path. And so I help them decide which direction to go. And when I meet them, they tell me their stories. That's one thing I love. One of my favorite parts of the day is to talk to students from Note School as liaison, because everybody's story is so fantastic. They're all coming from all these different backgrounds, and they're action takers. They're out doing things. They're not just studying it. These people are really rocking and rolling. So it's encouraging to me to hear their stories, because I want to take action. And I would like to encourage all of our listeners to surround themselves in a community of action takers, people that are not victims of their circumstances, but are quite determined that they are going to take action, whether they win every fight or not. It doesn't matter. Just continuing to carry forward and to not be afraid.
Right.
I think in 2020, when COVID came, we were fed a big, healthy diet of fear. And I think that holds a lot of people back. It's a shame. So just to not be afraid would be a message I'd like to put out there. And also I'd like to encourage women to start thinking about investing, whether it's buying a house or an investment property or a mortgage note. There is a way to do it. You do not have to have a large amount of money to get started, and it is possible.
Absolutely.
So I would like for that to be a message. And then women, if we want to talk about women for a minute, I just think they need to be mindful of supporting and providing for themselves and their children and carrying on and making sure that their family and the generations after are going to do well. So I've talked to a lot of women at Note School that are really mindful of future generations and are working towards providing for them as well. So we can talk about that at a later date, I guess.
Sorry about the technical hiccup there. So I want to get this wrapped up with Brenda. She got some good information, because I understand she's starting a group for women investors in January. Brenda, tell us about that and how interested women can reach out to you.
So in January, I'm starting a group with some ladies that work with me that is for women that have gone it alone or are currently going alone at life or have in the past. And it's really just to help us problem solve issues that we may have. And it could be little things like, how do we start a weed eater? Because I remember I really struggled with that little thing.
Right.
Or it could be something big, like, how do I buy my first home? Or how do I invest in notes? Or how do I buy a rental house? So I'm going to start that in January. I'd love to hear from the ladies if they want to reach out to me.
How are they going to reach you, Brenda?
They can find me as Brenda Price on Facebook, very public on there.
Okay.
Or at Brenda Your Lender on Instagram. And then, Tom, will you put my phone number in the comments somewhere where they could contact me there?
You can go ahead and speak it as well, because some people just listen to it on Spotify.
Sure. My phone number, 865-659-9036.
Perfect.
And as a mortgage loan originator, my number's out there. It's quite public. If you needed to contact me, call me.
Speaking of that, I can personally attest to Brenda's acumen as a coach. And so I haven't mentioned this before, but I've had my RMLO license for a couple of years now inactive. And in talking with Brenda, she coached me into Nexa as well. So starting in January, I'll be writing loans in Texas as well, and she's my mentor. So she's good. But if you want motivation and just somebody who literally teaches with a great heart. I mean, she's been through the school system for a couple of decades. The degree she has, but it's the delivery of care and actual compassion and understanding that makes her stand out. Note School is a big industry, and she was chosen to bring our most vulnerable new people on who don't know where to go, and she gives them direction, and she's always a compassionate ear. So Brenda, you're a treasure. It's been one of my pleasures this year to meet you. When I came on to Note School, I didn't know what I was getting into, but as I've told Eddie a million times, I've got a new group of friends. Everybody's wonderful. I was just on Note School TV 2 days ago. I was raving about our community, and you're there at the gates. Highly of you. So anyway, Brenda, thanks so much for being with us today. And ladies, get in touch with Brenda. You'll be glad you did. You're going to learn some, and I know she's going to make it fun too. She's a fun person, and so honored to have you on today, Brenda, to wrap up our year. So wishing you the best in the new year, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in person.
Thanks for having me, Tom, and I hope you and your family have a Merry Christmas.
Well, I really hope you all enjoyed that content. Brenda's the real deal. That's the kind of people we have in Note School. If you were to join, she's the person who gets you started, and heart of a teacher. She really is a teacher, but just an all-around great person. And so glad that she joined us today, work with us through our technical difficulties. And please do reach out to her, especially if you're a woman who's interested in any aspect of real estate and would just like to have a community of like-minded women to work with. I think that was very generous of her to share that information with us. So anyway, we're going to put a wrap on that before the internet goes back out again. Hopefully you got a lot out of today about pivoting and mindset, and we're happy to wrap up 2023. Look forward to 2024. A lot coming up in the new year, and we look forward to being part of it with you. So before I go, if you're interested in learning more about anything we talked about today, whether with Brenda or some of the other things we have going on with Note School, if anything intrigued you, I do encourage you to sign up for the free 2-hour masterclass. You do it from the comfort of your home. It's done virtually, and as soon as this section here is done, we're going to go to the outro. It's going to have a QR code. Go ahead and sign up. It's every couple of weeks. It's done live, and I think you're going to learn a lot. Like the slide said that I had early on, that the toughest decision is to act. Once you act, it's tenacity. You don't know what you don't know. So if you'd like to join our community, find out what it's about, put some more tools in your pocket as we go forward to 2024, maybe it's your time to pivot. So this would be a good place to start. So anyway, thank you all for joining us. Thank you for being with us this year. Look forward to seeing you in 2024. Have a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, and we see you in January. Take care.